Good evening. We're going to call the meeting to order for the City of Walker Planning Commission for September 6th. Second item on the agenda is review the meeting minutes. Looking at the August 16, 2023 minutes. Any comments or corrections or a motion for approval?
Motion to approve. Support.
Motion by Scott, supported by Tyler to approve the minutes of August 16. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. We're at this point, we've got 3 items on the agenda, but right now is an opportunity for general public comment, not necessarily about the projects at hand, but anything in general that you'd like to share with the commission, with your neighbors, as far as general issues for the city. No takers? Okay. We'll move into first agenda item, case number 23-017. It's the final area site plan review. I'll make a note that we've got 3 items on the agenda. They aren't advertised at public hearings, but in the course of things, we generally do make allowance if people have any questions about the project to be able to ask those questions so that you can hopefully go away with a little more knowledge about the particular projects. So, sorry about that. Turning it over to our planning director, Paula Preby.
Thank you, Chair. Let me pull these up on the screen so everyone can see a little bit about the projects that we'll be talking about. The first case tonight is 23017. It's a final area site plan for 3370 Northridge Drive. It's currently zoned IPUD, Industrial Plan Unit Development, and is located on Northridge Drive across from Hendershot Avenue. This final area site plan is for Lot 7 of the Northridge Drive East FASP. The proposal is for a 43,200 square foot industrial building for up to 3 tenants, along with utilities, parking, landscape, and other site improvements. The overall IPUD was approved in 2019. The applicant met with city staff for the site plan review committee in early August, and most of the comments and concerns from a planning and zoning perspective were addressed at that time. There is one note I have for the board. The plans show, and I'll pull this up in just a moment, they show a proposed ingress-egress easement near the east drive where the interior drive pushes south of the property line to allow for the drive to align with Hendershot. And so that easement should be recorded. So this is the overall Northridge East IPUD. This is the Amazon facility, and Hendershot connects 4 Mile down to Northridge. So we're looking at Lot 7 here, just south of this curve in Northridge Drive. And so the proposed easement that I just mentioned is right here. So there's the property line, I believe, and there's the road pushes south of the property line to align with the road across the street. I'm catching all of the things in there. So that is what we're looking at here. Industrial building proposed for 3 tenants. There are 3 requested PUD benefits with this plan. The first, they're requesting 120 square feet of wall-mounted signage split over 3 units. And that I spoke with the zoning administrator, and as staff, we don't have any concerns with that request. They're requesting 71 parking spaces as a PUD benefit to allow for significant variations in future tenant manpower requirements. That's actually more parking spaces than would be required as like the minimum. And so they're asking for additional parking. And they're requesting a waiver from some of the landscape requirements as a PUD benefit due to transmission mains along the south property line and the extreme topography along the west line. And so immediately south of the property line here, they get very close. There's a little bit of a grade change, and then there's those overhead, the transmission lines for ITC run right through there. And on the west here, you can see the grade is very steep. And so on the landscape plan, there are trees proposed along the road and the drives and along the front of the building. And staff feels that is an appropriate request. It's up to the planning commission to determine their perspective. There's a few other things just for the good of the room. So here's the zoning, it's IPUD. On the master plan's community character map, it's designated enterprise, which is for industrial use. Here is an image of the existing conditions of the site. Again, this is immediately across from the Amazon distribution facility, and some site photos that I took last week on a very, very nice sunny day. Not like this morning. So that's all that I have. I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have at this time.
Thank you, Paula. Commissioners, any comments, questions at this point? Okay, thank you, Paula. We'll turn to City Engineer Scott Connors, please.
Yes, we had a few items during site plan review, but they've all been addressed, so you have a pretty clean report from us,
Okay,
which is a nice change, right?
yep.
Yes, yes.
Likewise, anything for Scott? Okay. All right. At this point, the applicant, if you want to come forward, offer your comments on the project.
Adam, if you could please, there's a button on top of the microphone, a green light will turn on. We got new microphones for the stand. I'm happy to come help.
Oh, switch. There we go.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Adam Feenstra with Feenstra & Associates, the project engineer for this one. Paula did a great job kind of going over the overview of the project. We went through a few variations on what we wanted the site to look like. The client really wanted to kind of span that curve to keep that building frontage kind of close to the road, keep it as attractive as possible in that manner. So that's how we kind of arrived at the layout we have here. And then as Paul and Scott said, we need to really try to line that trucking entrance up with Hendershot for safety reasons. And we are in the process of getting an easement from Viking Products to the south. They are looking at possibly tying in some future parking into this drive, so it could even be a shared use, shared access, which everyone likes to see. So everyone's real positive about that location. We just got a few procedural hoops to jump through before we can get that all signed and are good to go. So yeah, we're excited to hopefully wrap another piece up in the overall Northridge East project, and there's not too many parcels left, so.
Thanks. Again, any questions for the applicant concerning the project? In terms of truck routes in the area, 4 miles of truck route, I presume?
There are no restrictions on 4 Mile Road.
Okay, all right. And then the rest of the Northridge are obviously truck route.
Correct, they're all part of the city's truck route system. Okay. And 4 Mile Road is actually a county road.
Okay. Anybody in the audience have any questions about this project? Okay. I think that in terms, it looks pretty straightforward. Probably just take a focus for a second on the PUD benefits that they have asked for, and Paula has pointed out with respect to the sign display, 120 square feet. Is there any strong opinion as far as whether to grant or deny that?
I don't see a problem.
Seems
It
reasonable.
all seems reasonable especially with what we've done in the past, so.
Okay. And the parking spaces, sounds like they've got a few more than what would be minimally required. But it does sound like they're looking at having some flexibility in terms of the tenant mix that comes in there. Any comments on that either? Okay. And then the third one is the waiver request on the landscape requirements along the south and west lot lines. Again, sounds like it looks pretty straightforward, reasonable given the constraints on those property lines. All right.
Mr. Chairman, I'll offer a motion on case number 23-017, 3370 Northridge Drive Northwest. Based on the application material provided, I make a motion to approve the final area site plan for the new 43,200 square foot industrial building for up to 3 tenants and associated site improvements at 3370 Northridge Drive Northwest, subject to the following conditions and based on the findings of fact noted below. Conditions. Number 1, the applicant shall record and propose the proposed ingress-egress easement for the East Drive and submit documentation to the Community Development Department prior to the issuance of building permit or stormwater. Findings of fact. The dimensional arrangements of the building and structure conforms to the required yard setback height and other regulations of the IPUD zoning district. The proposed building and structures have a compatible relationship to the site, terrain, landscaping, open space, and other structures existing and proposed. Proposed site drainage will be provided so that the removal of surface water will not adversely affect regulated natural areas, neighboring properties, or the public storm drainage system. The provisions for vehicle parking and for vehicle and pedestrian circulation on the site and onto adjacent public streets will not create hazards to safety and will not place demands on public services or facilities more than capacity. Drives, streets, and other elements have been designed to promote safe and efficient traffic operations within the site and shall provide safe and efficient vehicular access to and from the site, considering adjacent streets and curb cuts. Existing lighting will not create undue hazards to motorists traveling on adjacent public streets, nor damage value or diminish the usability of adjacent properties. Lighting will be adequate for the safety of occupants or users on the site. Plant material will be used to enhance the appearance of the site, to screen unsightly or harsh elements, and to provide visual relief from large monotonous features such as parking lots. Landscape buffers will be preserved or provided to ensure that proposed uses will be adequately buffered from one another and from surrounding public and private property in compliance with requirements of section 94-344. All buildings and structures will be arranged to prevent sufficient access to emergency vehicles.
Okay, we have a motion by Tyler,
Support. Go ahead.
support by Joe. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, the next project is case number 23-018. Again, another final area site plan review, and I'll turn it over to Paula Preby, our city planner.
Thank you again, Chair. We navigate to our next case for the room. All right. Case 23018 is a final area site plan for 2150 Northridge Drive. This is part of the larger Walker View PUD. It's currently zoned IPUD. It's located on the south side of Northridge Drive, just east of Shippers Drive, and I'll pull up a map momentarily. So this project, again, final area site plan, 2150 Northridge Drive for a 15,660 square foot industrial building, along with associated site improvements. As part of the application, there was a previous application, I believe it was last year, for a project on lots C9 and C11, kind of this area here. It was 3 separate lots were combined. As a part of the original Walker View PUD, they were designated as some of the commercial lots. They were zoned C PUD. Last year, there was a proposal for a larger industrial user. Those parcels were rezoned to industrial. That project since fell through, and now they're back to being 3 separate lots, industrial, with industrial zoning. And so if you looked at the tables down here for the commercial lots, the industrial lots and the commercial lots, the lot in question is on the commercial table, but the information there, the size of the lot has not changed. It's just now commercial and allows commercial uses. Just wanted to clarify that for anybody that got confused looking at the overall PASP as approved, because there are some changes to that, and that has not been updated yet to reflect that. The applicant met with the site plan review committee in early August and was provided feedback on the plan. The applicant addressed all of the staff comments and concerns related to planning and zoning. The plans as presented meet the Walker zoning ordinance regulations as to use, setbacks, conformity with the PASP, phase 1 parking, loading, landscaping, lighting, all of the things that I normally talk to you about. In my professional opinion, they're all good. So let's look at the site plan here. This is a smaller, narrow lot, kind of where the road curves down here. I can zoom in for you as well. So you can see 2 entrances off Northridge Drive. The truck dock is on the northwest corner. And you'll note that there is a phase 1 and a phase 2 proposed that you can see here. So at this time, the proposal is for phase 1, and then there you can see the phase 2 for the future, along with a loading space, additional parking, etc. There's one PUD benefit being requested with this project. That is to defer some parking in part of the east buffer landscaping until the building use requires more than is currently provided. So if phase 2 comes into play and they need additional parking, there is some noted deferred parking spaces for each phase, along with a future retaining wall if that deferred parking is ever needed. So again, here you can see the lots that were originally part of the red commercial, now they're industrial zoned IPUD. Also designated enterprise in the community character map in the master plan. Current site conditions, that is approximately where the lot is. That's the FedEx facility that's on Northridge Drive. And then existing site conditions. So that's all that I have for the board at this time. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, any questions for Paula? Okay, thank you. Now we'll turn to City Engineer Scott Connors.
3 items that are engineering related. First off is that the downstream storm sewer that serves this lot has not been constructed yet. That's a private storm sewer that would run across Walker View lots I-4 and I-5. So I think what we're doing here is reviewing the plan as proposed, which means that it's shown on there as by others. I think there's a little bit of a debate between the developer and the new property owner about who's going to pay for that. We're not here to pass judgment or pick winners and losers on that. That's up to them to work out. So our review again is to just look at what's proposed on the plan. If this does move forward, then the applicant should provide the storm sewer easement across the south side of their lot, so that lot C11, which is to the west, that might even be changed now that it's industrial, not C, but it's the initial lot C11 is intended to drain across their property. So we don't want them to get boxed out by not having that in place. So we would require that. And then the last issue or note is to point out that the truck turning movements here are very tight. And this isn't a situation where we're going to want to see cars or trucks parked out on Northridge waiting for an opening to back in, things like that. In a new industrial development, you know, we should never consider that an option. It should be all maintained on site, taken care of carefully in the design. So I think that's something that we need to consider here, and that if there's an unforeseen issue, it'll be upon the developer's responsibility to find a solution to that, not to have an impact on the public health, safety, and welfare by parking out in the middle of an industrial corridor. Those are our items.
Any comments or questions for Scott? Scott, it looks like the loading area in phase 2 probably wouldn't be serviced by the same size of truck as what's shown for phase 1.
I would agree with that. It's going to have to be a much smaller truck.
Okay. Okay, any other questions, comments? Okay, the applicant, come forward, please. Identify yourself and introduce this project. Adam again.
Yes, once again, my name is Adam Feenstra with Feenstra and Associates. We were the project engineers for this one as well. Yeah, Ascent Cabinetry is currently based out of Ada. They are looking to get into more of standardized cabinetry lines, and so they're proposing this manufacturing facility here in Walker to greatly expand their operations. Yeah, and phase one is here, and then they're hoping in a few short years to expand to phase two. Given that it's a cabinetry shop, they need quite a bit of space for each worker to work in and for material storage. So they aren't anticipating a huge number of employees, and phase two is even more so. You know, I think they're going to start with like 10, and phase two is going to bump it up to like 16 or something like that. So that's why we are requesting that deferred parking, because we know that their maximum occupancy in that building is going to be relatively low. But we also recognize that if they were to ever sell the building, there should be appropriate spots to add more parking for a higher intensity use. So that's why we have that deferred area. For the loading docks and the truck turning, after Scott's initial comment, we did eliminate one of the parking spots up along the front of the entrance and kind of push that landscaping buffer in a little bit, just so that the truck coming in could make that turn a little easier. And as for the getting into the dock, our turning template shows that they should be able to get up to basically the sidewalk or just past the sidewalk, but not into the street, in order to get their trailer straight so they can back it into the docks. So yes, for a full semi, it will be tight, as Scott said, but it should be much more doable than some of the older industrial developments out there. But tighter than maybe we like for new stuff. But they wanted a similar size for phase two, and if you look at the topography on one of the other sheets, in the site plan sheet, you see there is a very large drop-off to the site. So to get that, to make this lot big enough for them to utilize, we had to make some concessions on the truck turning. As for that loading area on the second phase, it's simply an overhead door for small stuff. Any of the actual loading dock operations would go up to the front. So it's almost more of like a forklift door than anything else. So I think that about kind of covers those high points. And once again, I thank Paula for putting together a nice little initial presentation, and staff for their comments. It's always a pleasure to work in the city of Walker, so we appreciate that.
Yeah, what are you gonna do in this place? Is it a cabinet shop? Is that what it is?
Yes, it's like kitchen cabinetry. Instead of, I think right now they do mostly custom, and they're looking to expand into what's called the semi-custom, where they have some more standardized sizes that they can ship pre-assembled to job sites and then kind of finish up.
Thank you.
Any idea how many trucks will go in a day?
You know, in terms of finished product, they're not going to be looking at more than, you know, 1 or 2 trucks a day, and raw materials, there'll probably be a couple more, just because you get a lot of sawdust and everything created. So, but we're not talking 30 trucks in and out of here a day. That's why they're only asking for 2 docks. It's a, you know, it's a medium-sized facility, and 2 docks should handle their needs and any possible future needs quite nicely.
Other comments, questions? Paula, in terms of, this is a final area site plan, so even though they've got it for phase 1 and phase 2, we're looking at action on the entire building or just the phase 1?
At this time, it's really just the phase 1, the approval in a Planned unit development like this is good for 2 years. If the applicant happened to be ready to move forward and take action on that phase 2 within that 2-year window, theoretically, they could move forward, but in my discussions with them, I anticipate that being an addition that would come back at a later date.
Okay, all right. The applicant understands that as well? Okay. Anybody from the audience that has any questions about this project? Okay, thank you. Commissioners? Dan, any comments on this project here?
All these two have been very clean, so it's been nice to see, so thank you.
Okay, thanks. Scott?
I mean, I think it's a good project. I wish there was more space for the truck turning and, things like that, but, overall, I think it's a good project and good use for the space.
Thank you.
I'm good on this one. Yep, no comments.
Tyler, you're all set? Likewise with me. Do we have someone ready to offer a motion?
I'll make a motion. Case number 23-018, 2150 Northridge Drive Northwest. Based on the application material provided, I make a motion to approve the final area site plan for a new 15,660 square foot industrial building and associated site improvements at 2150 Northridge Drive Northwest, subject to the following conditions and based on the findings of fact noted below. Conditions of site plan review approval. The applicant shall address all the items outlined in the city engineer's report dated August 30th, 2023. The applicant shall provide 3 sealed sets of civil engineered plans incorporating the recommended conditions to the Community Development Department prior to the issuance of building or stormwater permits. Findings of fact per section 94-283. The dimensional arrangement of buildings and structures conforms to the required yards, setback height, and other regulations of the IPUD zoning district. The proposed buildings and structures have a compatible relationship to the site terrain, landscaping, open space, and the other structures existing and proposed. Proposed site drainage will be provided so that removal of surface waters will not adversely affect regulated natural areas, neighboring properties, or the public storm drainage system. The provisions for vehicle parking and for vehicle and pedestrian circulation on the site and onto adjacent public streets will not create hazards to safety and will not place demands on public services or facilities more than capacity. Drives, streets, and other elements have been designed to promote safe and efficient traffic operations within the site and shall provide safe and efficient vehicular access to and from the site considering adjacent streets and curb cuts. Exterior lighting will not create undue hazards to motorists traveling on adjacent public streets, nor damage the value or diminish the usability of adjacent properties. Lighting will be adequate for the safety of occupants or users of the site. Plant material will be used to enhance the appearance of the site, to screen unsightly or harsh elements, and to provide visual relief from large monotonous features such as parking lots. Landscape buffers will be preserved or provided to ensure that proposed uses will be adequately buffered from one another and from surrounding public and private property in compliance with the requirements of section 94-344. All buildings and structures will be arranged to permit sufficient access to emergency vehicles.
Thank you. We have a motion by Scott. Is there a support? Support. Support by Dan. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you. All right, and now we're on to case number 23-019. This is a major amendment to approved final area site plan And we'll turn this over to Paula Preby, our city planner.
One more time, I'm getting everything all set up for you here. Thank you. All right, so we're looking at the English Hills development. I'm going to talk through this a little bit differently using the screen here. This plan went through PASP and FASP already. This is there is an approved final area site plan for this project, and the development team has been working through the conditions and the utility connections and all of the different components related to moving this project forward. Some of those have come back to you. One of the things they had to do was amend the precise plat for Northridge Drive. So that might sound familiar. We did that earlier this year. They're back requesting a major amendment to the approved final area site plan, and some eagle eyes caught some numbers off in my report. So I'm going to read this with the correct numbers here. So the action requested of the Planning Commission tonight is to review the proposed amendment to change the building type, reduce the number of buildings from 42 to 37, and the number of units from 552 to 550 for the approved final area site plan for the English Hills multifamily residential development. So again, most of this has already been approved. There are two areas in this proposed development. There's Area A, which is kind of everything between Northridge, the new section of Northridge Drive, and 4 Mile, and Area B is everything south, so that's down here. All of the proposed changes are to the Area A. That's the northern part here. It would adjust Area A from 24 buildings, each with 8 units and a private garage for each unit, to 19 buildings, each with 10 units, 6 private garages available per building. No changes are proposed to the street layout, utilities, anything in Area B, or other site amenities. Is that clear before I move on? They're only looking at changes to one section of the plan.
Just put your light on or light up what we're talking about. Which part is
Yep.
the whole, there's 142 acres there, I think.
Yes, oh, that's the wrong one. Hold on just a second. I've got a map that I colored to give you a better view. Oh, no. Oh, no. Okay. Wow. All right.
All right.
So this is the Area A section of the plan, and I colored it. You can see the outline of the proposed buildings that have since been removed. So on the new proposed final area site plan that I'll jump back to in just a moment, these buildings 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 that I colored green are gone. There's been some adjustments to the parking, so there's some additional parking. You can see this parking lot over here overlaps where the building used to be. When some of the garages were taken away, there's some more uncovered parking. There are still some garages, but no longer does every unit proposed have a garage. And then, as you can see down here, there's a change to the number of parking spaces, as well as the amount of impervious surface as part of these changes. So I'm going to jump back to the other plan to hopefully help make some of this more clear. So here you can see like that building is gone. The building that was here is gone. So all the buildings shown now have the new footprint, the new parking, et cetera. This is the proposed plan. This is unchanged. This is Area B. So the buildings now in Area A are proposed like this. There are 6 internal garages and parking spaces in front of those garages, as well as uncovered parking adjacent to the buildings on each side, and an interior hallway connecting the buildings. So anyone could rent one of the 6 parking spaces within the building. They're not connected to a particular unit. And then the applicant provided a write-up kind of explaining some of the changes and things, and I'll have this available for them to go through if they would like. So this is the new the new proposed building. So the first floor, you can see 6 garages, 3 exterior doors, and then an internal hallway, stairs going up to the 2nd level, which also has a hallway. So there's more units per building now than there was before, and that's but each building has more units in it than previously. Went from, I believe, 8 in each building to 10 in each building. And the building will look a little bit different. And so there's the garages, as I mentioned, and the other side of the building with those other exterior doors, and some renderings of what those buildings look like. So the primary change, and I will let them speak to this in more detail, came from the type of building and the type of units that they were hoping, found the need for in the housing market. That has shifted since the original proposal. They came back and wanted to amend with this new building, and the changes are limited to those areas. The building type has changed, the number of units per building, the number of garages, the total number of parking spaces has also changed slightly, the amount of impervious surface, no changes to the roadways, to the other area of the plan, that sort of thing. And so they came to site plan review, spoke with staff from a planning perspective. I don't have any real concerns or issues with these changes. The overall numbers are very, very similar to what they were. The unit type is changing, but again, a lot of those things, the changes to parking, changes to the building, et cetera, warrant the project coming back for approval by the Planning Commission. So that's why it's here tonight. Make sure everyone understands the proposed changes. And that's kind of my overview for you. Everyone's familiar with the location of the where English Hills is, and that's what I've got. I'm happy to answer any questions if I can for the board.
Thank you, Paula. Commissioners, any questions? I could give a good overview as far as what the changes are. I think when the applicant's up in front of us, we might want to ask them to contrast what the building elevations are as they to the outside of the site where the neighbors would be, and see what changes that might entail. With that, want to move along then to city engineer's report. Scott?
We actually did not put together a report because there's really not an engineering component to the request. It's really more zoning and land use preference, so we'll kind of stay in the background and be available.
Now, one thing that, as I recall, at recent projects where you have attached housing, the area outside the garage, sufficient area to park a car that doesn't go across the sidewalk that goes along the property. From your standpoint, they're good in that respect?
It's my understanding that those dimensions really haven't changed, but 25 feet is what we typically use as a minimum. That allows for kind of a standard pickup truck and still being able to walk front or back behind it safely. So that's still our requirement.
Okay. Commissioners, any comments or questions for Scott? All right, at this point, if we can have the applicant come forward, identify yourself and introduce the project from your standpoint.
I'm Jesse Luter. I'm with Wolverine Engineers and Surveyors. We were the civil engineer on the project. Thanks to Paula, she hit most of the items that I was going to go through as far as the differences, but I'll elaborate on a couple other little things that have changed with it. So overall, for the parking on that northern half, the area A, we have a reduction in 48 spaces. It still exceeds the required parking amount for those buildings according to the zoning ordinance. The impervious area went down by about 100,000 square feet. One added benefit of that is we'll get more greenscape out of it, so we prefer that. The total units, it was 2 units were eliminated by eliminating the buildings, and that was by going from 10 units each to 8 units each. A couple other items that were adjusted, as Scott mentioned, the alignment of Northridge Drive was adjusted with that adjustment to the precise plat. So we did adjust the drive of Northridge going through the site. The wetland impacts are all the same as they were before. Lighting is all the same as it was before, other than minor modifications, just moving things out of drives and things like that. We did have storm layout is all the same as it was before. Pond locations are the same. We did modify the sidewalk crossings slightly, eliminating, I believe, 2 of them, and then changing the layout to get a safer walk, and that was through a communication with the city and then the traffic committee. We did add a couple hydrants on the site through communication with the city as well, and then water and sewer were modified slightly just through communication with Grand Rapids. As far as the construction schedule, we're asking that we defer the coordination of that schedule to the development agreement, which will come at a later date with the city, then also with communication with the city engineer as well. And those are the main differences.
Commissioners, any other questions for the applicant? With the change in the parking, a reduction in the parking that's associated with the changes, is it still a case where the parking will be, people won't have to walk across the private drive in order to get the parking spaces?
Yeah, we did kind of a standard parking layout, which allowed for very similar parking around all of those buildings. We noted that the original layout had probably an excess of parking due to the 10 garage spaces and then 10 exterior spaces in front of each of those spots, as well as surface parking spots. So we identified that there was a possibility to reduce some of that parking and not really waste that space.
In your narrative that you submitted with us, you kind of explained why you're going to the 10 unit per building versus 8 units, and the relative size of the bedroom of each of the units. If you can explain that as much to us as it is to the audience as to what that change is in terms of the size of the building and the size of the units, and why you're doing that.
Yeah, I think the narrative does elaborate on that quite thoroughly. I can say that briefly, what it really came down to was the fact that they didn't believe that this was going to be a viable option with the larger units that we had before. The building footprints that we have now are almost the same size, but the units are slightly smaller. This allows for more units per building, while also making the project more viable. They felt like having those larger units, they weren't going to be able to rent them out. And all in all, we want a successful development that reaches near 100% occupancy.
Now on phase B, the more southern part, that remains unchanged, and those are probably larger apartment units in phase B.
They are larger, yes. It's not by a ton though, and they were smaller than the original units that were on the northern half.
Project phasing. There was information in the report that addressed that. If you could explain that to us as well as the neighbors.
The project phasing is slightly up in the air because we're trying to bid the project out currently, and we'd like to get some input from the contractor that'll be working on it, how they think they can address the site and phase the site in such a way that has the smallest impact on residents, the city, emergency access, all that sort of thing. One item we do know is that up on Northridge Drive and 4 Mile, there's a small section that does connect to the English Hills condominiums. We're still proposing to do that in a very quick manner so that the disruptance to them is as minimal as possible. It may not be the first item that gets tackled, but there's still access from the blue route that's shown on here that would allow construction vehicles into the site without disturbing them.
Okay. All right, any other questions for the applicant? All right, thank you. Any questions you have? Again, this isn't a formal public hearing, but if you do have some questions, be happy to field those.
Name Stanley Gronick, resident, 3334 Gulfview Drive, in the city of Walker, in the development next door that's being considered. The question I just need answered is more of clarification. So there's a total of 37 buildings. What's being proposed is reduction to 19 buildings currently, and then 18 buildings would be the 37. So I just don't understand the mathematics in terms of how there is a reduction of 2 units to 550, since the 19 buildings total 190 units, and the 18 buildings thereafter, or I'm not sure which is built first. I presume the 18 are built first. They're 16 units apiece. Is that correct? Or so when I add 16 units per 18 buildings, that's 288 units plus the 190. It's 478 total units. So I just need a clarification on that. You know, is there a mixture of number of units in that Plan B? And further, is Area B the first then to be constructed? Because based on the site plan, it seems to be. And further, number 3 is, do these changes involve reduction in terms of the overall development costs, which I thought were about $45 million? Has this increased then the cost of the project by having these changes? And number 4, I guess, would be, you know, the ownership. I see listed on the site plan as John Hennessy. Is he a resident of Walker, or is he a resident of Indiana? Because I know there's Sunstone Properties and there's Domo Development, and you know, I guess as a resident next door, I'd like to know who to address any issues in terms of complaints. I know there'll probably be a manager on the property, but you know, technically, you know, if there's any suits involved, you want to address who in fact is the owner and their legal residence, and if there's, you know, sufficient funding for the project. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Developer group, if you could just jot some notes as far as responding to those, so that at the end of this. Thank you.
I am Renee Curtis. I am at 3313 Ipswich Drive, Northwest. This year is my 27th year enjoying this beautiful area. Couple things I have a question on. Are we keeping our park? There's a park at the end of Ipswich. And
Hold the mic a little closer, please.
okay,
Thanks.
I'll project. There, at the end of Coventry or Ipswich, there's a park there that is used for walking dogs, playing baseball. There's swings and just people enjoying themselves. And it's used very frequently. And I'm just hoping that that's going to stay undisturbed. The other thing is that I am on Ipswich towards the other end of the road, and I want to make sure that, well, I know there's supposed to be a building with activities, and there's outside activities. It's not tennis, it's a smaller court, but I just want to make sure that I'm not going to be hearing a lot of commotion between the trees that separate me and the buildings, because it's a wonderful place to live. We've had deer, we've had turkeys, we've had foxes, we've had all these little critters, and I want to be able to keep them. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Ray Torn. I'm at 3303 Ipswich. That'd be directly to the east of the activity center Renee was just mentioning. I have a quick question because my last search on the internet showed that the tennis courts and pickleball courts for the city of Walker were closed due to problems with users. Could anyone on the commission tell me if that still exists? You don't know?
They are closed.
They're closed?
Yes.
Okay, so I've got to wonder, what's the difference between the pickleball court here that's going to be directly behind my house and the one that's here in Walker City in seeing distance from this location that you've closed down?
Okay.
So that's the first question. The
Okay.
second would be related to the more units per building. That seems like that would lower our housing values. No? So if you've got a tenement house right next to yours, would that excite you? More units per house just reminds me of the old days where it started going down in value. So I guess that'd be a question if you're considering that. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Janice. I'm just a concerned citizen. This income level of renters and tenants that they're seeking to attract people has me a little concerned. I work in a hotel in Grand Rapids, and it has turned into a flop house due to lack of housing. 3/4 of our hotel is long-term residents. These residents are paying $400 a week now for a room. They have up to 5 people in the room and 2 animals. Now, from what I figured out from their rents, they're going to be charging less than $300 a week for the lower price, and for their high income, they're going to be charging roughly about $450. While we deal with the Grand Rapids Police almost on a daily basis. I hope the city of Walker is ready to beef up their police department.
I'm David Lightfoot. I'm president of the English Hills Condominium Association. From the very beginning, we've had mixed emotions, I guess you'd say. Some excitement about knowing that we're going to have a top-of-the-line development next to us there. We are concerned, obviously, as anyone would be. And looking at the plan, it seemed like it was going to be very high-end. And we were sold that bill of goods that this was going to be a high-end, much like the other developments of Red Hawk all over the Midwest.
But when I see the summary of the development that you received, and I saw on the computer today, it talks about 855 square feet, and the market was going to be $1,100 to $1,800, which was Janice was just talking about. That concerns me, and I think it concerns all of us, of what we're going to have next door to us at that kind of rate. That is not market value in Grand Rapids. We know that. We see the kinds of rents that are involved in Grand Rapids, and we have a small apartment complex on the entrance to our place, and the rents are far higher than that to begin with, and that's filled all the time. At $1,100, you're going to have hundreds and hundreds of trucks and cars and everybody who can, motorcycles and everybody else that can come in. You get an $855 square foot for $1,100. If that's supposed to be in high end, I really question that. We also are concerned, obviously, about when is this going to start. I looked at your sequence, or the sequencing of the developer. We keep waiting. We keep seeing a little bit of action going on there. And looking at the sequences, it does talk about something happening in October of this year. I guess we'd like to know. Do we have a better plan now? Are we going to wait another year or two? We don't mind waiting too long if we know about it, but at the same time, we'd like to know what's really happening in terms of time. And the third item is actually access to our place there and our concerns about the high traffic volume that's going to be involved with 550 units. Now, I know I talked to Paula one time on the phone about Northridge, when you had a Northridge concern, had to come back to the Planning Commission for a change. But we'd like to know if there's really going to be a connector out to Bristol to take some of that traffic to a different way out of our concern. We know it's going to be really, really tough with that many apartments coming in there, and you're talking about one additional entryway out to 4 Mile, plus what we have right now with the one out to 4 Mile from where we live. Anyway, we'd like to have some answers to some of these things if we could. We'd certainly like to know what's happening in terms of the construction, whether it's going to start in October and then have more starting in the spring. We're looking at, according to the sequencing here, it's really going to get started in the spring. I guess we'd like to know that. But we did think it was going to be a high-end development. I guess right now we have some concerns whether it's really going to be a high-end development or a development that we have some concern about with, as Janice does with her kind of experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would the development team would come forward and if we can go through and respond to those questions, please.
All right, so I'm going to do my best to kind of go in order of how these comments came up. The first question was on the change to the buildings and the units in the northern portion of the site. Those numbers are spelled out on C 3.15 and on C 3.0. It describes the differences in those units, and I believe they're all correct. I'm not sure where the confusion was, but we can spell that out again.
So that's, I think the question was, okay, on the northern portion, 19 buildings, 10 units per building.
Correct.
Okay, the southern portion, what's the count?
The southern portion is 20 units per building and 18 buildings. And so then again,
I think where the confusion was is that the 19 buildings with 10 units per replaces the previously approved 24 buildings with 8 units per.
Correct.
So that's where you get the reduction is in that math.
And again, those southern units haven't changed at all.
Okay.
The next item up was complaints or future complaints for during construction. We do have developers' contact info that we've tried to keep in touch with residents in that area throughout. I believe he's given his cell phone number to most of the people that live in that community. We're happy to, I believe, give that information back out or make sure it's available if there are any complaints. We had a question about keeping the park. Not only are we keeping the park that's there, but, well, we don't have any impact on the park itself, but we are donating a couple acres of land to the park to make it bigger, and that's still the plan for this area. Yeah, the hashed out area there is land that we're donating to make the park larger.
Okay.
As far as activities and noise, this also kind of goes on with the pickleball. The idea behind some of these features, a pool, a clubhouse, pickleball, bocce ball, all these kind of things, is to keep residents happy, to attract new residents, to get higher clientele. I find that a lot of these places that don't have those amenities, you get a lower clientele in those sort of developments. So the idea is to add nice features to keep those clients happy, to fill the property, to make it so this place doesn't become 50% full, and where it does get a lower level of clientele because they have to lower prices in that area. As far as the units themselves, these are higher quality units. They're not base level stonework. This is new construction techniques, and I think these buildings overall they're not intended to appeal to the lower class. The middle class is really the target audience. They did mention some of the spending for some of these units. I know 1,100 sounds relatively low, but these are for the studio apartments or the one-bedroom apartments. $1,100 for a one-bedroom isn't cheap, even by Grand Rapids standards. So I think those are fair prices for what they're trying to have the target market be. As far as the start dates, we would love to start in the fall, breaking ground, with actual building construction beginning in the spring. We're still finalizing final approvals through Eagle and through Grand Rapids. So there's a lot of play back and forth just with meeting those requirements. For access and high traffic, we have done a traffic impact study on the development. I believe we've met all the requirements of that. There is a future connection from Northridge to Bristol that's part of the City of Walker plans. So we still anticipate that to be in the future, and that's the way we've designed our layout. And then we do have 2 entries again to the site itself. It's not just Northridge. We do have a new driveway that's going to be located farther to the west. And I apologize if I missed anything, but I believe those were the major items that came up.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners. Joe?
Well, I've been out there, and I don't blame the people for wanting more stuff in their backyards. It's a nice area, and it's very well taken care of, and we've got a lot of golf courses that are being closed. And you've probably seen the one on Lake Michigan Drive. That's close to me. We don't like to see that, but people have got a chance to do that. Is it going to decrease the deer? Sure. Is it going to make more traffic? Sure. But we try and do it in a way that pleases everybody. We can't please everybody, but we're trying. But I can see why you guys can complain. But I don't think this is a big change from what it was before. What they're offering, we've already passed this once before. I don't think this is a big change, is my opinion.
Okay, thank you, Joe.
I would pretty much agree with Joe that, the number of people that are going to be on this site are the same, maybe even a little bit smaller, slightly. The infrastructures, the roads and things are the same. The question is it still a high quality development or units, and it looks to me to be that, so, I'm basically for it.
Thank you. Tyler?
I agree with them. I'm always interested in people not wanting things in their backyard in the development, be part of the development. The closest structure to the border of the property is 700 and some feet. That's, this room is approximately 60 feet long, so you multiply that by 11 or 12. That's quite a distance, just to the property line. Up towards the front, it's around 400 feet, so these aren't right up next to the property. If you look at it, they did move everything to the west to keep away from the property line as they could, so, you know, nobody wants anything in their backyard, honestly. I love the environment, I love open spaces, and that's what we always come up against. This is what, I hate to say it, but this is what's needed in Walker right now. And that's one thing we're looking at, you know, is the density, and I'd rather have single-family homes, but that's not what's needed right now, and the entry level is needed, especially with interest rates growing up and everything. So I don't think it's a big change, and I'm going to approve it.
Thank you, Tyler. Pat?
No comments to add. I agree with everybody else.
Steve?
Yeah, I don't think the change is unsubstantial. I think that through the initial part of the process, there was a selling point made of, specifically in this part of the development, each unit was going to have a garage, and it was going to be a certain level of property. That being said, putting it back through the lens of what does that change in the larger scope, does it still fit the qualifications of what we would consider approvable on the site? And I think it does meet that threshold. And to the price point piece, looking at rates around the city of Walker and some of the apartment buildings that are existing, this is towards the upper end of that mark for one bedroom. So that's where, I think I come around to supporting the project still, so.
I don't have any comments to add. I'm in favor.
Dan?
Same here, and I thank everyone for coming and voicing their concerns. You guys have been working on this for, 18 months, 2 years, however long it's been. The changes seem fine to me. I mean, from the majority, the reduction of the buildings here. And I'm on board with what Stevie said too about the rent. $1,100 is not bottom of the barrel, especially in Walker. $1,100 to get you a decent apartment in downtown Grand Rapids. I'm not speaking out of turn, believe me. Okay, but I understand people are concerned, but at the same time, I'm going to move forward with supporting.
I'm largely in agreement with the fellow commissioners on this. The reason it was coming back is that there was a change, and in this case, it wasn't a large change in the number of dwelling units and reduction in parking associated with that. There was more green space on the overall site as a byproduct of that. There's always some uncertainty as far as the development of property around you and what that's going to do to your property values. The developer has stated their intent for a high-quality development. Sometimes that's not necessarily in terms of what the rent is. It's on the amenities and the design of the project. And I believe that they've been responsive to that, and they've respected the borders of where the existing neighbors are located. They aren't moving any closer to that. I think this is going to be just as good of a project that was approved previously. But we had to go through this process in order to move forward on it. Their interest in undertaking the project as far as timing goes, If they're gonna put it out to bid right now, if they're fortunate, they'd be able to get started this year, but probably realistically, it might be spring. I guess I could leave that to the developer there, but timing comes into play. Sunshine right now, but cooler temperatures ahead, and so again, the scope of our review is site plan review. Is this consistent or similar with the prior approval? And so we've looked at all aspects of it, and at this point, I believe we're ready for a motion on the project at hand.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion for case number 23-019, 1200 4 Mile Road and Drive Northwest, final area site plan amendment. Based on the application material provided, I make a motion to approve the amendment to the final area site plan for the English Hills multifamily residential development at 1200 4 Mile Road Northwest, with changes to Area A regarding building type, building size, number of units, number of garages, and number of parking spaces, in accordance with the plan set last revision dated 8/16/2023, subject to the following conditions, and based on the findings of fact noted below, there are no additional conditions. Finding of fact, the amendment to the approved English Hills final area site plan, as illustrated and described by the original final area site plan, and in this amendment continues to meet the standards contained in section 94-184, 94-214, and 94-216 of Walker Zoning Code, and continues to meet applicable standards for review. The final area site plan as amended herein remains in substantial compliance with the previously approved English Hills PASP and FASP, consisting of the maps and accompanying written materials required under section 94-213 of the Walker Zoning Code.
Okay, we have a motion by Tyler. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Dan. Any other comments, questions? There being none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you for coming this evening. Paula, as we look ahead to the upcoming agendas,
Yes, we will, the second September meeting will be discussing the status of the zoning ordinance rewrite process, as well as some information on some upcoming amendments to the city's master plan. And that's all that I have for you at this time.
okay.
Make a motion to close.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to adjourn. No, that's fine, Taylor, take it.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay.